We're all swimming in a tsunami of information, as our ability to produce information has vastly exceeded our ability to manage it. And because of that, we're losing a lot of information. Stuff that people send us or we create, we store somewhere on our computers and we can't find it later. So either we go without or we even recreate it. We're wasting a lot of time doing this. I'm going to give you a few hints on managing your information. They'll make a world of difference in terms of your ability to find stuff and saving you a lot of time. First off, most of us are still organizing our information in folders like you see here. Unfortunately, this is probably the worst way to organize information. This is a holdover from the old paper folders. In fact, they look like paper folders. And the problem is that any particular file can logically be placed in one of a number of folders. Most of us have an entire folder structure. It goes 5, 6 layers deep. Here we'll go to work, which brings up a whole bunch of different work folders. I have education, I have Magna, and on and on. And any particular file can logically be placed in any of a number of folders. This means we have to chase down a rabbit hole of different folder branches to find our files. Eventually just give up. Now we're probably going to keep storing our files in folders, but searching for them is a different matter. We don't need to just keep opening and shutting folders to search files, and there's a far faster way to do it, and that's to use a search utility. Probably the best one that ever came along was Google Desktop Search. This allowed you to search your own hard drive in the same way that you do a Google search of the web. You'd simply type some tags for your files, and it doesn't have to be the exact title, it could be just descriptors, and Google would pull up all the various files that fall under those descriptors. It would even organize it according to file type, you could sort it and things like that. Unfortunately, Google stopped supporting desktop search in 2011, and though it still seems to work, we can't guarantee that it's going to work forever. So you're probably better off searching for something different. And a new function that works fairly well is called everything. Here's an example of what an everything search looks like. Once you download the software, all you have to do is type a search term, and all the different files will get pulled up no matter where they are on your hard drive. Notice I have zip files, I have photo files, I have recordings, I have text documents. And you'll notice that they're actually in different locations in my hard drive. See, it doesn't matter where I store them. If I use a search utility, it'll simply find the files that match those names or have those words in the file name. However, you're also going to have to think about how you label files, because we lose a lot of information because we don't label our files very well. I'm going to go over a few file labeling conventions that will help you quite a bit. First off, most people don't use good descriptions of their files in their labels. These are actual examples of file names that I've been sent. Use this one. Report, release notes, adjuncts up to date, no CFE, yes Dean. None of these make any sense to me. Report could be any file. Release notes doesn't tell me when they were released. Same thing with adjuncts up to date. What date are they up to? A year from now, is it up to date? This is the reason why we lose a lot of information, and you need to have good file naming conventions so that you can find your files when you do a search. Following these conventions will save you a huge amount of time. The very first rule is to pack information into your file name. The primary mistake people make is that they choose a file name that makes sense when they save it. They understand what it means when they save it, but it doesn't make sense later on. You always want to choose a file name that allows you to find the file later on when you don't know the name. So here's a file that's simply the name of the document, Teaching Information Management. That may seem okay, but what if later on I'm trying to find that information organizing article or something like that I wrote? I don't know where it is, but I know a lot of things about it. It's better to put a title like this, Magna Online Classroom Newsletter Teaching Information Management. Now when I search for it, I know it was for Magna Online Classroom Newsletter, so I can start by searching that. And I know it has something about information management and has something about teaching. Any one of these tags will allow me to start honing in on it. So you want to add as much information in your file name as possible, thinking of possible words that you might search on later on. Now, a lot of people date their file names, which is good. However, they usually do it wrong. Here's an example of dated files that I've been sent. What's wrong here? Can you see it? Well, the problem is that the date's at the front. So now when I look up the files in a directory, I get the date first. They're organized by date rather than subject. And so I have to read through each different subject line to try to figure out what the file is about. If you're going to date your file, don't put the date at the front. The date should come at the end. And in front of it should come some good descriptor, something that you might search for later on. The other thing is to use a consistent dating format, and the best one is to use year, month, day. Can you see why? By doing year, month, day, the files will sort in a directory chronologically according to dates. The number will simply creep up because you're using the most general designator year first. A lot of people start with the month or even the day, but that essentially randomizes the order of the files. If I start with month, January, then all of the various files I've saved under January will all be grouped together, not the ones I saved in 2013. So start with the year, then go to month, then go to day. Remember, most general to least general, and they'll sort correctly and be very, very easy to find. When I see this list, I'm looking for the June 2013 webinar, and my eye can run to it immediately. If I used a different format, I'd be searching all over for it. And this most general first principle applies to the names themselves. Here are a list of files related to a class I teach called CFE 6000. Now, the class is the most general designator, so that comes first. Then within the class, there are a number of weeks, week 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the week comes next. Then each week has different assignments, different activities. So I have assignment, discussion, quiz. And you notice by using most general first, the list sorts in a way that's very easy to scan. It's organized. If instead I use, say, the word discussion first, then I'd have one file with discussion in one week and another file with discussion in another week. Maybe the different classes would be scrambled, so I'd have a discussion from one class versus a discussion from another class. Starting with the most general first makes it easiest to find the information when you look at it. Next is version control. Here are a number of different versions of the exact same file that have been sent. This was the same file that was updated by different people, and each person just used their own label when they saved it. This doesn't make sense. Using your own file labeling method is a bit like everybody using their own method to label envelopes. If we did that, we wouldn't be able to get our mail anywhere. There's a reason why the post office defines a method to label envelopes, because a label needs to be read by somebody else, just like the file name needs to be read by somebody else. And if you constantly are saving the same file under different names, you'll just simply scramble where they are in your directory and you won't know which is the most recent file. Essentially what it does is it causes the different versions to branch outward in more or less random directions. Instead, you want to preserve the file name and simply add a V number at the end, V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, C6. Feel free to add a new V number whenever you update a file. I have files with V46. Hard drive space is cheap. It's almost free. You're not spending any more money by adding a new version. And by updating the version number every time you open a file, you allow yourself to recover the most recent information if the file you're on gets corrupted. You have a recent version you can go back to and only minimum number of changes you have to worry about. If you're constantly overwriting the same file, then when that gets corrupted, you may lose a lot of information and have to reproduce the whole thing. Plus, very often a number of people are working on the same file. So by simply creating a new version number when you update, you can send a message that says we're on version 5 or version 20. Make sure you're using that version. If you only have version 19, you know you have an old one. The easiest way to maintain version control is right in the save function. When I open up a file and I want to change it, the very first thing I do is save it under a new name before I've even made any changes to it. All I do is I click the last version in my list and then change the last version number. So in this case, version 7 is the last version. I simply click that so it fills the file name, and I change the 7 to an 8 and save. Now I work on the file. Now when it auto-saves, it's auto-saving under the new version, version 8. If I waited till the end, every time the computer auto-saved, it would be overwriting the old version. So these are a few rules that'll help you manage your files. It's going to save you a lot of time in the future. Thank you very much.